Good, good morning, friends. The second Sunday in Advent with the intent of self-forgetfulness. So this is the preparation time, as we talked about last Sunday. So we're wearing purple, the colour of preparation. It's one of the really deep times of the year, and as we know, Advent Sunday is the start of the Christian year. So this is the start of our new year, this preparation time. And what are we preparing for? We're preparing for Christ's coming. And that whole process of Christmas, as we talked about last time, is all about the coming of Christ in our hearts. We talk a lot in our little church about Christianity being really a change of consciousness, to use 21st century language. And that sounds maybe just a little bit cold and a little bit boring. A lot of people talk about changes of consciousness and all sorts of things, but this is a genuine change from the heart, where the inspiration comes from, and a change of life as we grow into it. So that's the Christian message. And speaking of Christian messages, both the Epistle and the Gospel, taken from times where, well, not so much the Epistle, but in the Gospel where Jesus was teaching by a lake, taking advantage of a lake and being in a small boat and speaking from a boat. So you can just imagine that situation where people are eager for this word, eager for the message he's speaking about. But let's come back to the intent of self-forgetfulness. When we see that word, maybe it's easy to misunderstand it. We might say, well, which bit of ourself are we forgetting? Now, in our church, in the Liberal Catholic Church, we have the concept of the multiplicity of our being, not just our physical self. There are other components to us which are not visible to the human eye. So this is part of our understanding. And so this sort of teaching is called esoteric, simply because it means it's not visible, it's not obvious, it's hidden. Mystical comes from the heart. Mystical comes from realizations that come to us, dreams, just daydreaming, just thinking, just spontaneously. Sometimes they're hard to articulate. Our esoteric knowledge is a little bit more, not so much concrete, but a little bit more definitive. So with our understanding of the broad view and the composition, the multiple composition of our being, including our body, then which part of this are we being asked to forget? Well, it's the bit maybe that's the most precious at the moment. We have our emotions, we have our intellect, and we love our ideas, and we like to tell everybody about our ideas. And we love to experience our emotions and fall in love and all that sort of thing. Lots of pop songs about that. And we like to look after our bodies when they're fit, not giving us grief. So that's what we call our personality, our intellect, our emotions, and our body. Our soul is where the Christ resides, waiting patiently, fortunately for us, waiting patiently for us to knock on the door and say, hello, can we come in? Can we share your understanding? So this change of consciousness, which I started to talk about, means we change from an emotional world or an intellectual world from our point of view into a Christ-like way of thinking. This is not necessarily straightforward. And this necessarily takes patience. But then when the change of consciousness comes in a rather profound experience that we're all destined to go through, just as Jesus went through it, this experience, when it happens, then floods our personality, body, emotions, and intellect with a Christ-like awareness. So I'm saying lots of things now and concentrating a lot of ideas into just a few sentences. But I'm just saying these things in the interest that you know when we read about self-forgetfulness, it doesn't mean daydreaming, it doesn't mean being dopey and forgetting things. It means becoming more like our Christ self and forgetting about all the other bits and pieces that we hold precious and that we think are permanent. We think will go on forever, but they won't. So when we read the first line of the collect, we read, "O God, creator and preserver of mankind, we thank thee for thy never-failing love." So he's preserving us. He's holding the whole show together, which is rather fortunate because we're not terribly good at it at the moment. We're good at some parts of it, but we need to learn about other parts to hold it together. And we, as mankind generally, we're responsible for all the lower kingdoms. That's part of our job. And the never-failing love is the energy then, coming from the Creator, which nourishes us always, 24/7. The collect goes on, we want to show praise to you. We want to remind ourselves first, and then we articulate back to the Creator, thank you for giving us this awareness. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to grow spiritually. And we want to give up ourselves in your service and walk before thee in holiness and righteousness. So we want to give up ourselves. We want to give up the small part of ourselves. We think it's the large part of ourselves. We're pretty proud of it. We've done lots of things to bring it to where it is now, and that's fair enough as far as it goes. But it's not permanent. So we want to give up the small part of ourselves, which is not permanent and not really super duper perfect. We want to then take on a different level of awareness, which we call holiness and righteousness, just using those biblical sort of words, meaning Christ consciousness. And we want to be able to do that in our lifetime. That's our aspiration, the path of Christianity. So in the epistle, which Wendy read this morning, the Apostle to the Thessalonians, this is St. Paul speaking. So he's a tough guy, St. Paul. He always speaks very directly. Not everybody enjoys reading what St. Paul's got to say. Sometimes he says things that are misunderstood too. So he's saying to these people, these Thessalonians, he's wandering around the Mediterranean, just collecting up a little bit of resources and then going to the next centre, writing letters, sending them on, taking advantage of the Roman postal system. So he's telling everybody what's going on, reminding them all that went on. He's saying, comfort yourselves and edify one another. It's a nice phrase, isn't it? So you've got this sense of community. Comfort one another and edify. What does edify mean? Edify means remind one another what we're here for. What is the Christian message? What I've just been speaking about in the earlier part of this little talk. And then he just goes on to say, but it's not all sort of gloomy stuff. He's saying, rejoice among yourselves. Quench not the spirit. Prove all things. That's a nice phrase, isn't it? Prove all things. Sometimes when you're trying to get a feeling, a spiritual feeling, a little taste of the numinous, as we say. What does that mean? Just something that feels right. Something that feels like the reality of a vivid dream, but is significant. You know, when you wake up after a vivid dream and you think, I wish I knew what that meant, but it somehow means something really important to you. That feeling of the numinous is the feeling of growing awareness of the Christ within, of the wisdom coming from the heart. So St. Paul is talking about be of one mind and encourage one another in this journey, all of you. He's not speaking 21st century language like I am. He's saying, remember what the message of Christ is. All of us are here to change our awareness, irrevocably change our consciousness. He's encouraging everybody to do that. And then in the Gospel of St. Mark, Jesus is in a boat close to the shore. Lots and lots of people are listening to him, and he's teaching a lot. And so he's speaking in parables to people, and he's saying, the sower. He tells the parable about the sower of the seed, and then the disciples say to him, "Oh, what does all that mean?" He says, "Well," maybe heaves a bit of a sigh and thinks, come on, wake up, disciples, wake up. The seed is the word of God, and I am the sower. I'm sowing the seed in all of your hearts. And sometimes it thrives, sometimes it doesn't thrive at all. Sometimes it really takes off, and your life changes, and you become a different person. So you have to understand that there's all these people around, people listening to what I say, and Jesus says to the disciples, and you as well, because now I'm giving you extra teachings. I'm explaining it more to you, so you can make it something really important in your hearts. And then he uses the concept of a mustard seed. So a mustard seed is just tiny. You rub it between your fingers, you can hardly feel it. It's mustard seed. And he says the mustard seed, this word, this seed I'm planting in your heart, the seed I'm planting in everybody's heart, is like a mustard seed, the smallest seed in the botanical encyclopedia. And it grows into this huge bush that all the birds can sit in. So it's out of all proportion. The fruits of the word are out of all proportion to the way it starts. So Jesus starts off with his, what we might call a motley crew, selects 12 people, all different backgrounds. They're all struggling to understand. He's saying to them, keep working on it. He's saying to us, keep working on it. Keep working. You don't have to be miserable about it or have a long face or take yourself too seriously. But here I am giving you an opportunity to make your life richer and deeper if you'll take these words on board and really learn to work with them. Learn what it means to forget your smaller self, your personality. Learn what it means to just feel the Christ within. Feel that wisdom arising from the heart. That's my message. But he's telling everybody they must do something about it. You've got to get on with it. If you suddenly all wake up just before I come back again, it's too late. So these messages maybe sound a bit tough. But if you want to be a Christian, if you really want to take advantage of this, we do have to work every day. And we've talked about how to do that. One of the easy ways, if you like, to do it is this self-forgetfulness, these intents. You wake up in the morning and you might say, the first thing is you might say, oh, thank you, I'm still alive. That's nice. It's always nice to wake up and you're still alive. Thank you for another day. Thank you for an opportunity to learn a little bit more. And then recall the intent of the week, self-forgetfulness. And say to yourself, now what were some of the things that I thought I might like to try? And you just try them, just one at a time. And during the day, you just recall them, just every now and then. Having a cup of coffee, walking along, whatever. What does self-forgetfulness mean to me right now? What can I do about it right now? That's it. It's a personal journey. It's an individual journey. And it's a journey that all of us are connected with the love of Christ. Amazing, isn't it? So it's an individual journey for all of us. We're all separate. We've all got a unique role to play on earth, and we're all connected with the love of Christ. It's a good deal, isn't it? Good deal. We didn't have to pay anything for it. We just had to be aware of it and grow into it. I encourage you to think on these things this week. And as we approach Christmas, of course, enjoy it all. Enjoy everything about Christmas that it is. But be aware of what's behind it. The coming of Christ, in our case, the recognition of the Christ in our hearts. And enjoy your presence. And enjoy his presence.